What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another Drums and Drams whiskey review. My name is Cameron, and today we've got another episode of Quick Sips, this time taking a look at OKI Reserve batch number 1. Now, I went back and forth on this bottle. I didn't know if I was going to release this as a full review or do it as a quick sip, and I decided because I feel like at this point, every whiskey tuber and reviewer out there has already sort of stated their opinion on this bottle, that I didn't need all the production value and the bottle breakdown, all that kind of stuff that comes with a full review. I felt like I could kind of get my point across and hopefully try to add something to the discussion by just doing a quick sip here. So this is going to be a little more stream of consciousness. You know, quick sips are generally unedited videos anyways, and so that's what I'm going to be doing for all of you right now. We should start off by talking about OKI kind of historically. I mean, it's not a historic brand or anything like that, but it had a previous iteration, let's say. And most of those bottles looked like this. This is from, that previous version of OKI. This is a small batch bourbon, age stated at 10 years old. Basically, OKI back in the day was sourcing high quality and pretty highly aged whiskey from MGP. They had some small batch products like this. They had some single barrel releases. You generally saw these between 10 to 12 years old. And at the time, it felt like they were pretty abundant. And as the years go on, obviously, they got more and more scarce. That shortage of highly aged MGP bourbon started to become more apparent. And now in the secondary market, a bottle like this is maybe like $450. Some of the single barrels, $750. And I don't think they're worth that, but it's kind of following that trend that all old MGP is following from the last 5 to 10 years of just being crazy inflated. All right, so that's kind of the setup. Now that brand kind of fell by the wayside, and about 2 years ago it was resurrected under new ownership. And the first thing that they did was release some young-ish high rye bourbon single barrels. It felt like every whiskey club in America was getting a single barrel of this stuff. I don't know what the SRP was. I want to say $60, $70. Secondary was like $150 to $200. I tried it. I thought it was fine. Could have just been my single barrel, but it just didn't feel like anything special, to be honest with you. Fast forward a little bit, they started releasing some rye single barrels, which I have not tried. But I would say that the most exciting thing, the thing that people were looking forward to the most, at least on paper, was this Reserve batch number 1. It is a blended bourbon whiskey. It's not all bourbon. It has some other mash bills from MGP in the mix here, but the age statements on this bottle are exciting. The proof point, 100 proof or 50% ABV, is pretty exciting. It's not cask strength, but we all like a good 100 proof whiskey. So let's talk about what is actually in this bottle here, and then we'll dive into this quick sip review. So 5 different mash bills from MGP, and I think it's kind of being talked about or marketed as the 5 most famous MGP mash bills. We have the low rye bourbon, 21% rye bourbon, which is the majority of this blend. I believe that makes up about 32% of the blend. We have the high rye bourbon, that 36% rye, which is my favorite MGP mash bill. That makes up also a pretty good portion of the blend, about a quarter. We have a 95.5 rye whiskey, and that's about a sixth of the blend. And finally, a combination of light whiskey and rye corn whiskey, which is a little less known from MGP. The light whiskey and rye corn whiskey combined make up about 28% of this blend, with the majority of that being light whiskey. There's only a dash of rye corn whiskey in this blend here. It's also worth pointing out that the age statements on all of this, it's pretty transparent, which is great. I mean, we can check that box for OKI in that regard. The age statements here are generally 8 to 10 years old. There's just a little bit of some younger stuff in that 36% rye bourbon mash bill. So we're not going to go into any more specifics. I know I've talked long enough about the setup and the backstory here. Let's just go ahead and check this thing out on the nose and see what we get. So this is a little bit dry right away on the nose. It feels closest to the 21% rye bourbon mash bill. Now, I know if you haven't tried all of these different MGP mash bills, I might be talking like, a little foreign language in that regard. But that 21% rye mash bill from MGP tends to give me a lot of like heavy cinnamon and dry red / dry dark fruit notes. So kind of like dried cherries and a lot of cinnamon stick or cinnamon bark. But unfortunately, there's also just an overall dryness to this beyond those notes. It feels like this entire whiskey is on the dry and kind of sharp wood side of things. You're getting some candied orange here, which is pretty reminiscent of a few different MGP mash bills. I get it a ton, and I think, we all talk about that candied orange on the 95.5 rye. You also sometimes get it on the 36% rye bourbon. It just depends on the blending that they're using. You're getting that candied orange here, but it feels kind of choked off by the dryness in the blend. It feels like basically the blend is fighting itself on the nose. Unfortunately, there's kind of like a menthol. Well, that's not a bad thing, but it's like menthol, alcohol, white dog, grain neutral spirit. Feels a little alcoholic on the nose. There are some candy shop notes in here, a bright vanilla. That's probably coming from that light whiskey and that rye corn whiskey. But I think there's a little too much of it, which is playing into that alcoholic note, playing into that dry note. Yeah, I just think so far the blend is really, really fighting itself. There's something redeeming about the nose, but it just, yeah, I'll talk more about it in a second. Let's go to the palate. Cheers. Whew, that's dry. It stinks because there are so many great flavors and notes in here. You can tell this whiskey wants to be great. You can tell that there are solid components in this blend. It's just unfortunate that whoever blended this did a bad job. And I hate to say it so bluntly, because I think when we talk about whiskey as enthusiasts, or, well above my pay grade, like as critics, or what we do, which is just as like YouTubers, sometimes we forget the fact that a lot of hard work goes into this stuff. In the case of this OKI, they sourced some old MGP, and the blending process was probably, where the most work went in. And there was probably a lot of effort that went into that blending. But what happened here, or what I believe happened here, is what happens sometimes when I blend at home. And if you've ever tried to blend some stuff on your own, you might recognize this phenomenon, which is you take really good components, 3-5 things, and you put them together, and somehow they cancel each other out. It doesn't make a lot of sense. It's almost like, I don't know, it's like if two superheroes are shooting energy beams at each other and they meet in the middle, and it's just kind of canceling each other out. It's not a great analogy, but it's an analogy. That's kind of what happens here. It's like all of those great dark fruit notes and cinnamons and candied orange and some of the herbal rye spice from the rye whiskey and some chocolate notes and barrel char, all the stuff I'm getting in here, it just falls flat because something happened. Some parts of this blend are interacting and they're just not working together. That's just kind of what I think. Let's just do one more sip. I don't know. Let's do one more sip. The candied orange right away is so nice. And then boom, it's gone. It falls off in the back end. It gets dry. It gets kind of bitter. I just want to like this so badly. It's $80. That's the SRP on this bottle. Secondary for a while was like $140 to $160 maybe. To me, it's definitely not worth that secondary value. SRP, that $80 price point. I mean, for the age statement, for the old MGP, it makes sense, and it's an accessible whiskey. There was a lot of inventory, it seemed like, and distribution was pretty darn good. It was sitting by the case, by the caseload, or cases, whatever you want to say. There were many cases sitting on the floor of many liquor stores in pictures that I saw online. So, yeah, I mean, who's going to like this? If you're a fan of MGP, and if you're not someone that's uber critical of the whiskey you're drinking, I think you're going to like this. For me, And for a lot of whiskey enthusiasts who are looking for something that's holistically good, not just in the tasting notes, but in the actual construction of the whiskey and the development on the palate and the drinking experience. If you're looking for all those things, this leaves something to be desired, and I think you might want to pass on it. I don't think all is lost for the new iteration of OKI. I just think they need to go back to the drawing board on how they're blending. And I don't know. I don't know if it's like someone else needs to blend it. They just need to use less light whiskey. Like, I don't know what the actual problem is in here, but through and through, it's definitely a problem with the blend itself. So I don't even know where I was. I know I have to rate this thing. So I'm going to say, is this a recommend? Yes and no. I mean, $80. I know we're in premium whiskey territory around 80 and up. But like, if you want some aged MGP, if you can't get your hands on some of the older stuff that's floating around out there, this might be a good option, especially again, if you're not that critical of your whiskey. But I would say it's not a recommend if you're really looking for like that star of the show special pour and you want a great MGP blend. This just doesn't feel like it's doing it. So, rating on this, I'm gonna go with a 79 out of 100, which is a C+. It's definitely a little bit above average, but it's just not popping the way that I really wanted this whiskey to shape up to be. So I think that's all I've got, guys. Let me know in the comments below if you've had any experiences with this OKI Reserve. Be really curious to hear your thoughts. If you want to know what this tastes like and you don't want to buy a bottle, imagine every MGP flavor put together and then dry and not that good. That's what you're going to get. 79 out of 100, a C+ on this. Like, comment, subscribe, do all those good things. Cheers. I'll see you guys next time here on Drums and Drams.